Tom, today I want to talk about something that unfortunately shows that the more things change, the more they just seem to stay the same, right? As many of you know, along with running a non-for-profit organization, I teach at Harvard Law School. Now, I bring this up today because on occasion, I've heard a fairy tale floating around that black folks like me, who attend or teach at Ivy League institutions, are somehow shielded from the racism that other black people so often face. Well, the arrest of Professor Skip Gates certainly shows us that that is not so. Racism crawls around the Ivy League, as we like to say, just like poison ivy. Another case in point. Now, you may have heard, or some of you may have heard about this incident that took place 2 weekends ago at a Boston area nightclub called the Cure Lounge, where black alumni from the Harvard and Yale law schools, or actually from the Harvard and Yale universities, they were kicked out of their own private party because the owner feared that the party was attracting, as he said, quote unquote, local gangbangers. Now this, despite the fact that the event was a private party for black alumni in town for the Harvard-Yale football game, and there was a guest list. The club shut the party down. They shut it down at 10:45. Now, the party didn't even get started until 10 o'clock. At first, they were telling folks that it was due to technical difficulties, and then they later were claiming that the bouncer recognized some people in line that looked like local gangbangers. All of it absurd, ridiculous. I mean, come on, let's assume that the bouncer saw a so-called gangbanger in line. What options did the club have at that point? Well, one, the bouncer could have refused to let him in, right? After all, there was a guest list, it was a private party, and only the people on this list were let in. But they didn't do that. Two, the club could have called the police, but records show that the police were never called. Or three, the bouncers could have told the so-called gangbangers to get out of line. But they didn't do that either. Instead, what did they do? They saw some black folk, probably global investment analysts at Goldman Sachs, and assumed that they were gangbangers and shut down the entire party 45 minutes after it started. It's incredible. Now, what I bet happened was the owners, they were so hyped when they learned that a group of Harvard Business School students had rented their club for the Harvard-Yale alumni party. Then they saw all of these black folks show up, and they were like, what in the heck is up here? Fortunately, though, the Boston City Council, the Attorney General's Office, the Bureau of Alcohol Control, and others are all investigating this incident. But here's my point, Tom. My point is that it just doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how much money we make, how successful we think we are, or where we happen to work or go to school. Because as black people in this country, we are never exempt from the crime of breathing while black. Now, I know that some people, they've tried to convince themselves that they are exempt. But life has a funny way of smacking you right upside your head when it gets a little too big. Racism does not discriminate in the way that it discriminates. Let me just say that again for you. Racism does not discriminate in the way that it discriminates. Once a person is profiled as a threat, anything can happen. You can be out at a club, or you can be brutalized by police in your own home. And let me just say this. Long before I was at Harvard, guess what? I was black. I didn't stop being black once I got here, and there are just plenty of reminders for folks here and at similar places of the color of our skin. So black people who think that their positions, no matter how prestigious sounding, make them quote unquote better than others, well, or they entitle them to some kind of racism pass, well, they're just as warped as those people who automatically hate on black folks who hold those positions. Both of these attitudes, they just make it harder for us all to make progress in our community. And there is no need for us to start complaining about other communities hating on us if we're so busy hating on ourselves. So let's just embrace the diversity within our community. And we just need to recognize that none of us, not a one of us, is immune from racism. It affects all of us. I want to pull from Malcolm X to take us on home. He said, before there was ever any such thing as a Republican or a Democrat, we were black. Before there was any such thing as a Mason or an elk, we were black. Before there was any such thing as a Jew or a Christian, we were black. In fact, before there was any such thing as America, we were black. And after America has long passed from the scene, there will still be black people. Until next time, this is Stephanie in love and hope.